So the first thing I'm going to show you is a case-in-point exercise, an example of a case-in-point exercise for performing a calculation. So here's the pages from the book on alternative pay considerations, where we talk about self-employment income, we talk about tipped employees, and then we provide this table, which is a summary of of how we break down the calculation of overtime for a tipped employee into a six-step process. Moves into piecework, and again we have a table that summarizes the 5 steps involved in performing overtime calculations for a piecework employee. Then we move the student into the case-in-point exercise. In this particular example, we provide them with 3 different circumstances, and we walk the student through each of those different circumstances. So here in the second one with Meredith Bear, she is an employee, and she is a tipped employee. She's a valet at a steakhouse. So we introduce the information that applies to her, and then we bring the student step by step through this 6-step process. And in each step, we're not just telling the student what to do in the calculation, we're also explaining, why they're doing it, so that when they get done this exercise and they get into the repetition at the end of the chapter, they have a better understanding because we've provided them with the step-by-step detail. And again, not just telling them what to do, but also why they're doing it. And then there's the third scenario here, follows the same step process. In this case, it's 5 steps that are involved in calculating overtime for that piecework employee. The second example I want to show you is of the Examine the Form feature. So here we're introducing the Circular E and Form SS4. We get into the employee identification number, and then we get into the Examine the Form feature. So what we do here is we show the student a blank version of the form to start with, and then we provide them with these clear, simple explanations of each of the lines in the form. And once we get through that, then we move them into the case-in-point exercise for completing Form SS4. So here at the top, we are providing them with all the information that they need to complete this form. And then we break the form down into 5 different sections. Now, what you can't really see from the PDF here is that in the textbook, this page and this next page are both open together. They're adjacent pages, they're facing pages. So the student sees the direction here of the 5 steps on the left page, and then we have the example of the completed form on the right page. So what we're doing is we're breaking it down into related sections, and we, again, a very detailed way, walk them through step by step completing this form. So again, we're not just showing them a blank form or a completed form. We're starting with the blank form, walking them through the form, explaining all the different lines and fields to them, and then walking them through the actual completion of that form. And so that's how the Examine the Form and the case-in-point exercise work together to help students get those practical skills that they need for when they get into the workforce. So here is practice set A. This is from Chapter 2 on calculating employee pay. And so we start off here where we're having them identify pay periods and evaluate worksheets. Then they get into completing the time card. And then we give them a series of exercises for all different types of calculations. And you notice here that there's 5 employees that they work with for each one of these different types of calculations. So again, it's giving them that repetition, not just doing something once for calculating weekly regular earnings, they're doing it 5 times, so they get that practice and repetition. And it moves through all the different types of calculations that were introduced in the chapter. And in chapters 2 through 4, the practice sets conclude with having the student populate a payroll register and an employee earnings record. And again, in those, they're working with 5 different employees. So again, to get that repetition in practice. We then move into practice set B, which is really a mirror of practice set A. It's the same exercises, just with different employees and different data. We do have algorithmic exercises available in eLab. You have the option to turn them on or off. and they are available for all of the calculation exercises that the students work through in the chapter. Practice set C is not printed in the textbook. That's just an eLab, or you can get a Word document version of it from your instructor support materials. It's a good way to use that as if you want to use it for assessment, so that students are not, they haven't seen those exercises and that data prior to having to take the assessment in the book. So that's just, I know, one way that people use it. They might use A in class, B for practice, and then C for the actual grade because students haven't seen that yet. After the practice set B in the book comes the continuing payroll problem. And again, that starts in chapter 1, and it's a comprehensive project that builds throughout the book. And then each chapter ends with 2 critical thinking exercises where the student is typically asked to go out onto the internet, do some research in order to be able to answer these questions. And in this case, it's reviewing different types of incentive plans or researching state minimum wages.